All right, the property prequel, be in the know before you buy. FY25, what is it now? It's July 2024, but financial year 2025. And I thought I'd do something pretty cool. I thought, as you can tell, it's a solo ep today. I don't do too many solo eps, but definitely want to do more because it's something my brain always ticks over, and I love sharing property knowledge from my experience and observations as a buyer's agent and running a buyer's agency company. And some of my thoughts, sometimes I'm thinking, I need to unpack this and actually give it in a long form way. So you will see a lot more solo eps this year, which is exciting as well. But also we've got some amazing guests lined up over the next few weeks too. So be on the lookout for that. But as mentioned, I thought I'd keep with that theme being new financial year. It's always that point of the year, especially if you're in the property space, just like business. It's that pivot middle of the year where obviously from a financial point of view, everything ticks over again. It's a fresh start. The other pivot point is obviously end of the year, the new year and things like that. But I really wanted to keep this ep to my 9 biggest property buying lessons from financial year 2024. So my 9 biggest lessons from financial year 2024. I had some time to think about this, and I really want to try and add as much value for the next half hour as I could. And what I identified was these 9, they just sort of came to me. When I reflected on, I had a really cool property buying journey last year, not only personally, obviously I do a lot of my personal property investing. It's a real passion of mine, but also running a buyer's agency business. I extracted some key things that came top of mind when I was like, what would be some key lessons that I could really add some value to anyone listening right now? So if you're in the car, you're at the gym, or you're just listening to this, this will be a nice, punchy, juicy one. There's going to be 9 key takeaways that you're going to come away with by the end of this episode. So we're going to do our best. Half an hour, I'm going to try and punch it out. But these are my 9 biggest property buying lessons from financial year 2024 leading into 2025. Hopefully you take these and run with it. Number 1, focus on the right property, not just the next property. So what I mean by that, it's one of my favorites. And the reason I say that is stock is really, really short, not only on the Gold Coast, not only Southeast Queensland, but pretty much all the blue chip suburbs around Australia right now, stock is short. What I find some novice buyers do is they get to a point, especially if there's some sort of settlement pressure where they have to move, or maybe their pre-approval's running out after the 90 days. I see people just rushing into an asset because the property that they're trying to look for just isn't out there. One thing I always say is focus on the right property, not just the next one that pops up. Why it's key. After investing for over a decade now, working with some really good buyers as well with the business, making the right move versus the wrong move isn't a small mistake. Over the medium to long term, it's a 6 to 7 figure mistake you could be making. And I see it time and time again from people who rush into opportunities. Yes, the market's hot, so obviously you want to get in quickly, but one thing I always say is focus on finding the right property, not just the next one. And if you have that mindset going in, making sure you do all your due diligence, making sure you're prepped before you buy, making sure you're a sharp buyer, so that way you're not cutting with a blunt saw, so to speak, out in the marketplace, you're going to exert less energy and get better returns in the end. That's both for owner-occupiers and investors. So I wholeheartedly believe that. Keep the mindset. Number 1, focus on the right property, not just the next property. All right, this one's an interesting. Number 2 is get in better doors. Get in better doors. So I use the analogy, right? You're at a party, for instance, and you're having a great time, and you're soaking it all up. You're networking, you're having a good time, and then in the back corner there's a door, and you look at that door and you think, what's in there? You open the door, and all of a sudden you realize, there's a whole different crowd of people talking about different things in this room. So you're in there, you're networking, you're having a good time, and you sort of see in the corner, you're like, what's that door lead to? And you open that door and you look in there and you're like, wow, these people are talking around whole different things. It's a different ball game. And you keep going through that process, and hopefully that analogy is giving you the idea that the key is to get in better doors. If you want to be successful in the property space, especially on the buying side, be mindful of what doors you enter into. So I'm always thinking now, and this is from my personal journey too, is a really good example. When I started buying property, I started in my early 20s. And for me, a huge one was that first purchase. I was in the door of chatting to, brokers, understanding finance and how to get a deposit and saving a deposit and trying to save my income. Then what I noticed, you get through that door and you start actually looking at property. And then I was chatting with a lot of people who were similar, haven't bought many properties, their first, second, whatever. All I could afford was a unit at the time, so to speak. So, you start looking at units, and then what I realized, and then I started buying houses and started understanding more on square meterage and zoning and things like that, because I was surrounded by people in different rooms. Now I'm at a stage now where buying a lot more unit blocks and talking about developments and manufacturing commercial uplift through renovation unit blocks and getting the rental leases in place, and then that manufacturing growth and equity. So just like things, if I reflect back over the decade or so that I'm investing, the stuff I'm talking about now with people I'm talking it to was never on my radar when I first started. But the ability for me to keep growing and expanding, what I had to do was I had to keep opening different doors and surrounding myself with people who are where I wanted to be. So if you're someone right now and you've got a goal in the property space, talk to people who have actually done what you're hoping to achieve. That is my number one tip. Get in better doors. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3 kind of relates to this. So tip number 3 is be mindful where you're getting your knowledge from. Be mindful where you're getting your knowledge from. I think right now in 2024, leading into 2025, we're in an age now where we're bombarded with information. We're in a season of life that our mobile phones are used for greater good, but they also could be used for greater bad too. The amount of information that is given to us on a daily basis is utmost overwhelming. And what I find a lot of people is 2 things. They get stuck. They don't know what to listen to because there's just so much out there. Or number 2 is they haven't done the research on where the information's coming from. To be able to provide information to someone now, you actually don't have to have any sort of degree. As long as, I put it this way, like we're in the world of the finfluencer, the financial influencer. And I follow quite a few and I love them, and I'm always mindful of, I do some background research and make sure they've done what they say they're doing. But there's also a lot of people who haven't done what they're preaching as well. I believe you have to, before you talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. And I really believe in a day and age now, just be mindful of where the information's coming from. And one of my favorite ones in property is there's a lot of people trying to sell off things that it is a high ticket industry. So there are a lot of people who are trying to sell off, whether it's programs, property, all those sorts of things that actually isn't in your best interest. And to finish on my hot tip of being mindful where you're absorbing your knowledge from, one of my favorite quotes that I learned very early on, and I'm very grateful for this, I learned this tip and heard this quote when I first started the property journey, was that if the advice is free, generally you are the product. If the advice is free, generally you are the product. So property is one of those spaces where there are people out there trying to make a quick buck, and what might seem like value at the start is actually costing you on the back end that you can't even see. So again, do your research. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not saying all free advice is bad either. Definitely not saying that. There's some amazing operators who work in different ways and different models, but Just all I'm saying is be mindful of where you're absorbing your knowledge from. The next tip, what are we up to? Number 4. So this is a good one. Get in the helicopter. Get in the helicopter. So why I love this tip is I've realized, and I'll give you a story that really helped me look at a helicopter view on property and the asset itself. What I believe to be true now is that property is a get-rich-slow vehicle. Being in it over a decade now, I realize and the fruit of it actually comes in the medium to long term. It doesn't happen straight away. It might not seem like anything's changed in your life, but I can tell you right now from not only myself, but working with people who have done well in property, is that the fruit is very juicy, but it takes a little bit of patience and discipline. So one of my favorite is have a helicopter view. So I'll give you a quick story. My amazing assistant, me and her, we go through, she helps with my property portfolio. So I've got a fair few properties now. And yes, it is a lot to manage at different points. I hired property managers and things like that. And my assistant actually communicates now. So there's a bit of a barrier between me and all the property team. But one thing she always says to me, like every week, there's something like, oh, this tenant is unhappy with this. And I had one the other day where the step was too high for the tenant, so they want me to try and lower it so it's easier for them. So you hear all sorts, right? And she's just like, man, I couldn't deal with all of this stuff coming in and out. And what I said to her was, yes, it might seem like a little bit of pain in the short term, but from the helicopter view, you got to look at what that asset is doing. So what I mean is one of the properties, I've got a unit block in a location where there's 5 tenants. And within that, you know, sometimes there's a leaking this and a tap dripping there. Or as I said, the stair was too high for one of them. Because there was 5 tenants on the one block, it seems like there's a lot happening. What I said to her was, that's irrelevant for me, because if I look at the asset itself, it's producing X amount of income per week and per year. So you got to look at that calculation. And then the property price that I got it for versus what it's worth today surpasses any sort of $20 to $200 issue that's coming up. I've learned to pull back the emotions down and go up on the helicopter view. Another really good example of this is there was a property I purchased probably 2 years ago now. And this may relate to people with interest rates and things like that. Bought it 2 years ago. So you can see where this is coming from. I bought it for $1,050,000. And I remember the property at the time needed some work. I was going to get a reno done at some point. So it was original property. I'm talking ugly. Worst house, best street vibes. So I couldn't secure what I'd call like a high quality tenant because it was so rough. But I knew I purchased that property well below market value. So I purchased it for $1,050,000. Fast forward, literally 2 years ago, I bought it around 2 years ago, around May, I think. The interest rates literally went up like June, July, like it just literally kept going up ever since I bought it. So from the day I bought it at $1,050,000, there has not really been an interest rate dip or even a mellow out since I've got it. It's literally gone up every single month. So you could imagine what those repayments done to me over that period of time. And then to add to that, because it was such an ugly property, the rent return was actually quite low. So I was actually out of pocket quite a bit for the period of the last 2 years. Very, very hard to deal with, right? If you look at it from the micro. But what I learned again and again is jump in the helicopter. So I've jumped in the helicopter and I've remembered I purchased this for $1,050,000. Here's a good analogy. If you can buy things below market value, you can generally gain equity the day it settles. So the day it settled, I got it revalued for 1.39. So essentially that difference between $1,050,000, 1.39, that's available equity from day one. Now, what I had to keep reminding myself when I was forking out money and the interest rates kept going up and up was, again, jumping in the helicopter. Fast forward to today. Just had it revalued again, and the last check I was that it was around the 1.7 valuation. Buy in a strong area, buy below market value. Now, what I want to say, the helicopter for me is that's around 6 to 700K in 2 years. The extra interest rates that I've paid probably were below 10K. So my last tip to finish on this is an easy way to get up in the helicopter is look at things from a net position. Net. So after expenses, things like that, you want to be what is left in the net from your wealth side. So I see so many novice people just starting out, like property's not for me. Hold on, just go in the helicopter first, have a look, do your numbers with a finance professional, and then see if you are in a better net position. Because if you're in a better net position and it aligns to your goals, I'm telling you, the money, if you do it, the math properly, it far, far outweighs any minor repayments or any little maintenance things in the short term. A big tip. Also, a little bonus tip there too. I've created a system now with my assistant and property managers is basically anything under about $300, $200 to $300, I don't hear about it. So at least that way it kind of just gets done and you know it's moving. Anything above that, it comes with a review and then I'll approve it or disapprove it. So key tip there for someone if you're scaling a portfolio and you want to kind of win back some time. That's really helped me. So have a helicopter view was my next tip. So that's we're up to number 4. So we're about halfway. This is a good one. So tip number 5 is take full accountability. Take full accountability. Why I love this one is, again, observation, working with a lot of buyers, what I see the best do and the worst do. The best, they come in sharp, they do their research and they take action. What I see probably the novice buyers do, the ones who aren't in positions where they want to be, is they use the blame. They use the blame. They blame, generally it's the market. They blame whether it's the sales agent wasn't a great experience, or the big one is they blame their circumstances. So whether it was their, family upbringing or something that happened to them, something with their employment, whatever it may be, there's always some sort of blame within there. So why this is a key one for me in taking full accountability is the position you're in right now is a full-hearted approach that comes from you. So where you are right now is because of the actions and habits you've put in place. So no one is responsible for your property buying journey other than yourself. You can get help and get people's advice and things like that, but at the end of the day, you make a decision whether you want to be proactive and resourceful or you're someone who wants to blame certain conditions or things that happen to you for where you are. So that's a big one for me, is always taking full accountability. Number six. Oh, this is a good one. Come tax time. And this is one that really came to me definitely in the last 12 months. Build a money keep team. Interesting. Build a money keep team. Why I call it a money keep team is that you realize after some time, the game of property is two things. It's a game of finance and it's a game of keeping your money. It's a game of finance and it's a game of keeping your money. Who are the key players who help you with those two things? I think of a broker, a really strategic broker for the finance piece. And then I think of a very savvy accountant from the money keep side of things. So why I wholeheartedly believe in that is, especially on the accountant side, I've realized this. The game of structures, the game of land tax, the game of ATO and things like that. Again, this isn't financial advice. This is just my personal opinion. You have to have a strategic accountant who has worked with people with complex entities, complex finance structures, things like that. Something that's well out of my league, but the advice I get from my accountant, it has saved me way more than what they're worth. So I just think if you're someone who wants to build something with property and buy really well, is get the advice early. Get a money keep team early. Because the last thing you want to be doing is always forking out. There's strategies now where if you do the right thing and you get some good advice from a strategic accountant, doing one move versus another move could save you 6 figures worth of tax. Same as a broker. One broker might put you in this pool and one broker might put you in this pool. You're the same person, but because of the way they see you and their strategic approach, far different positions. So you need to build a money keep team. So if you're someone, again, who you've got a goal in mind, make sure you're with an accountant and broker who has worked with people who are where you want to be. So huge tip there is build a money keep team. Let me just check. I got my phone here. Where are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, number 7. This is probably an obvious one, but it's just something to highlight too, that over the last 12 months, I've noticed, this is my tip here, number 7, the housing shortage. There is a serious stock shortage right now, not only from the buying side in terms of sales, but even from a rental side. A member in my family is going through it at the moment in Brisbane in terms of the rental side of things. And tell you what, it just... firsthand, I'm experiencing it through the family. Like it is tough. It is very, very tough to secure rental property. It is also, in the same breath, very tough to secure a property to buy too. So again, you just have to accept that this is cyclical. That's probably number one. There is a supply and demand imbalance at the moment, but this is probably the biggest thing it's highlighted for me. If you're someone looking to build wealth or you've got another project coming up with property, is that the housing shortage means good property in good locations is very much in all-time demand. So if you're someone looking to buy something and maybe do a renovation or a project or a knockdown rebuild, or you're someone who just wants to park your money somewhere and buy something over the long term, I would be focusing on key solid areas that have strong owner-occupier appeal, and I'll be focusing on areas within distance to a solid capital city. That's just my personal opinion. So I'm just finding in those key regions that the housing shortage is at an all-time low, but the demand is at an all-time high. So if you're someone who can get in there and produce a product that's going to appeal to the mass market, you're going to get great results. The next tip, number 8, know the market and the end goal. Know the market and the end goal. So this kind of relates off the back of that. I had a property in a blue chip area, and I bought it a while ago now, but I was looking to make some chess moves on it last year. And part of the strategy I was thinking was injecting a little bit of cash flow into it. So I've got a renovation plan on it, but I was actually thinking of putting a granny flat on it. So there's 2 properties in my portfolio that I wanted to put granny flats on. One of them I executed the granny flat and it's boosted cash flow up, which is great. And I wanted that experience was good and that the net yield's good, still getting good capital growth. I wanted to do the same strategy on another property. But what I didn't realize was those 2 properties were in different locations. One was in a section of Brisbane and one was on a section of the Gold Coast. What I realized was the one that was in the Gold Coast region, it's in a blue chip area. It's in a high owner-occupier appeal area, close to the beach, really good spot. And I had some good advice. That area, and I guess number 1, good advice. What's the end goal? My end goal with that property, that's going to be a saleable property, most likely. It's a high capital growth property, not a huge cash flow property, but it's a high capital growth. I'm going to use it at some point to most likely sell down and then clear some debt in some other properties. And then I had some advice again from one of my money keep team who's been there, done that. He opted for me not to go down the path of putting the additional granny flat to boost cash flow. The reason was this. I was in an owner-occupied area. So I did all the fundamentals right. I was in a good area. It's doing its thing. But I could nearly be limiting my end goal on that property by putting the granny flat on it. It seemed like a good idea putting the extra cash flow on it. But really, do owner-occupiers in that area want property where there's less grass and a big granny flat out the back? And I did my research and I looked into it more, and I realized actually I'm probably making a big mistake here. So what I understood was this, and I'm going to use this principle moving forward all the time now, is that now I know that market, not all markets are the same. So you got to know your market and then know the end goal. This one being that I'm likely to sell it, I probably didn't want to risk that move getting in the way of the end goal. Now that I understand the market for that one, my strategy's now changed. I want to do a renovation on it that's going to boost up a bit of cash flow, but it's also going to manufacture a bit of equity. And then within the next sort of decade or two, I'm going to either knock down and rebuild or do a solid extension on it. And then that will pivot probably, again, most likely into a sale. So I'm super clear on what the next step is now. And I'm glad I got that advice on knowing the market and knowing the end goal. It's a very big one for your property buying journey. So that leads me to, I guess, the last tip, number 9. This is a good one. You can't move forward until you clean up the past. Oof, one of my favorites. And why I love this is you literally cannot move forward until you clean up the past. And this relates to 2 things in particular. Yes, I relate it to finances. That's a big one. I learned last year as I was growing my personal portfolio and having the business and things like that, things were getting messy. Things were getting unorganized. Systems and processes were getting out of place, which I didn't like. I really like streamlines. So for me, I had to use last year as a little bit of a 1 step back to go 3 steps forward. So what I did was I created good systems and operating procedures around when it comes tax time, when it comes finance time, where's all the rental agreements? Can we create hyperlinks that link them to the document? Just really cleaning everything up. Also from a finance actual spending habit point of view, is there any loose spending happening? Because I can tell you one thing, the more money you make in this world, there's a thing that's called lifestyle creep. So someone who might be earning X amount of money here versus someone who might be earning a substantial amount of money over here, realistically, what I've identified is that those 2 people have different zeros coming into the account, but they're in the exact same stressful position. And what I put it down to is on that journey to getting more zeros in the bank account, the lifestyle changes. And I like to call it lifestyle creep. So what I've had to look at with my personal life and things like that is there any lifestyle creep coming in? Let's start tying up some expenses. That subscription doesn't need to happen anymore. What's the current budget for groceries? All these key habits I had when I first started that was super disciplined. As you start getting traction and gaining more wealth, maybe those habits slip off a bit. So for me, I had to go back and have a look at, what am I spending per week on groceries? What fuel? Just everything. Having a look at your finances, cleaning everything up. Because again, you can't move forward until you clean up the past. But then this is the big one to finish on. As a person, I think people have to work on this. What I identified, if you want to be successful in property and you want to build something that's going to go beyond just your owner-occupied property and you want to get something that's going to enable you future growth for you, your future family, your current family, you want to create bigger impact and things like that, you have to identify as someone worthy of achieving that. So there's a lot of people out there that I've spoken to that want these things, but they actually don't believe they're worthy of it. And it's because there's something in the past that's holding them back. So more than ever, I believe there's a prong approach with that quote. You can't move forward until you clean up the past. There's a tangible finance piece. You got to get that all in order. But then there's the identity of self piece too. And I think to get to the goals that most people want to get to, you have to clean up both of them. If you clean up one of them but not the other, you will get success, and you will get to a point though that I feel the next breakthrough ceiling is cleaning up the other part of it. So for anyone listening right now, and hopefully the last, literally smack bang on about 30 minutes, hopefully the last 30 minutes I've shed some light, but I really wanted to finish on this one just to really nail it home. That tip number 9, you can't move forward until you clean up the past. Whatever goals you have this financial year, go big, dream, whatever's going to fulfill you. Don't put your success in the car of anyone else's external validation. Whatever's success looks like for you, go for it. And remember that you can. You can achieve whatever you want in this life. But hopefully that last tip really hit home, because there will be someone listening that they've got the goals, but do they truly believe it, that they deserve it? So hopefully that added some value. They're my 9 biggest tips from the FY 2024 leading into FY 2025. If you want to be a property buyer, hopefully those key tips help. And as always, if there's any questions, if any of those, key tips helped, make sure you share it on the gram or send me a message even. That would mean a lot. One of the tips stood out to you, let me know which one. If you want to unpack it, if you want some advice, send me a DM, send me a message. I'll be more than happy to try and add some value back to you. So I really support all the support with the show. And the big one is keep listening, because there's some exciting things bubbling up. FY25, it's really exciting. And all I can say is stay tuned. So thanks for listening.